Okay, I think both of you know me. I'm doing a book on the Great Divide, as you know, trying to understand why people believe what they believe, trying to get beyond groupthink, trying to have a little conversation. And I try to get to what people's hot points are and really try and get a little bit beneath the surface if we can. You know, about, why they believe, what they want to see happen in the country. So let's start with what your real hot buttons are, politically. As you look at things now, what issue really gets you excited, and what's sort of the one that you think really has motivated you, in recent elections?
I believe that Make America Great Again was a big motivation for me. Just the fact that everybody seems to be against any kind of change, you might say. The tariffs, everybody's against the tariffs now. And yet, people complain about things made in China. They're cheap, they're no good. Bring the jobs back to America. And so you put tariffs on them. Hopefully it'll bring jobs back here because it'll be cheaper, or just as cheap to manufacture them here in the U.S. And people don't want to pay any extra money for it. So that's kind of a big thing for me.
So you think that even if we pay a little extra, we should buy American?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. If you don't want to buy American, then you shouldn't complain about what you buy is cheap. Or it's not as quality as what you think it should be. So I'm not saying that everything made in America is top quality, but people have to understand that the reason that businesses left the U.S. was because of the cost of doing business here. And I mean, if you have to be paid $20 an hour here, they can have it made in China for 50 cents an hour. So there's no real, there's really no competition. So it's kind of...
Okay. By the way, let me back up a little bit. I should ask you who you are, and I usually ask that at the front. So let me back up just a little. I remembered what you said, and we're going to talk a lot about what you just said. So, what are your names? Where are you from? Where have you lived? You don't have to give your names. You could, I think, actually, you should give your name because people will recognize you. So,
Okay, I'm David Fritz.
Yes.
I've lived in Berrien County all my life.
Okay.
And I'm Kim Fritz, and I've lived in Berrien County all my life too. Baroda for 36 years we've lived in Baroda.
And so you lived in Baroda 36 years. And background in terms of, where you went to high school, if you went to anything else, and what you've done for a living, just so we know your background.
Went to Berrien Springs High School, graduated from Berrien Springs, and basically been a construction worker ever since.
You're not going to tell where you worked?
You don't have to say where exactly.
Okay.
That's fine.
Okay. I graduated from Lakeshore High School and Western Michigan University, and I was a preschool teacher and then a teacher at Rivervale.
Okay. For a long time.
For a long
so
time.
So you finally were able to retire recently.
Yes.
That's great.
Yes.
That's good. That's good. Okay. Back to trade. Have you always been I believe in talking to you a little bit and hearing that you supported Trump. Sounds like you have sort of a little bit more of a right-leaning philosophy, or is that a wrong interpretation?
I try to be in the middle of the road.
In the middle of the road. Okay.
I've gotten more so in the middle because I believe that we need a change.
Okay.
We've had people in government for too long. We need a change. I mean, the reason that they're still there is because people keep voting them in. But I believe we need a change in direction.
Okay.
And I believe, I'll tell you one thing about that too, I believe a lot of the problem in our society is the media. That is a really big problem.
All right, I want to go there. Yeah. Okay, so you want to change. So let's take apart one belief, or let's talk about one belief. I know you were reading that book, Freakonomics. Do you believe in free trade?
Oh, yes.
So if you believe in free trade, then you believe that these tariffs are not the norm, they are the exception designed to do something. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Because, well, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Do you think China's been unfair, or what do you think is unfair?
Well, it's just the fact that they can produce things so cheaply, and they can dump them. From what I understand, China makes probably most of the steel in the world. And because you can't, some people can't buy it directly from China, we're buying it through like Brazil. Brazil buys it from China, they turn around and sell it to us. So it doesn't look as though, they are producing most of it.
Okay.
But they are, and they can produce it cheaper, and plus they don't have the environmental restrictions that we do here in the USA.
So economists say free trade is good for the economy. Do you believe in free trade? I mean, I asked you that again.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
So let's talk about NAFTA. What do you think about NAFTA?
It's depending upon what kind of business that you're in, it can be good for you or bad for you.
Well, that's free trade, right? I mean,
well,
that is the way it works.
Yeah, and that's the way it works, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not arguing that point.
Yeah. There are going to be winners and losers.
That's right.
Yeah, when,
There is
before
winners and
before
losers and
NAFTA
everything.
started to that after it was put into effect, there are going to be winners and losers. People who don't produce as efficiently as some of the other countries. So one of the risks is that we throw out NAFTA. I mean, with the current negotiations that are going on, you think that would be a good thing or a bad thing?
Depends on what business you're in.
No, I think overall.
I mean,
I'm asking for the
overall,
country as overall.
I would hate to really see it disappear.
Yeah, I mean, it would hurt a lot of farmers. I mean, that's one thing that people are saying. I mean, in terms of manufacturing, I think the car makers use it as a way of extending their supply chain and producing cheaply. But I think you could also argue that if they weren't able to do that, we'd have more imports, from other countries, because they wouldn't cost what it costs, So it's a complicated supply chain. So you're not as comfortable with getting rid of NAFTA?
No, I'm not.
Okay. And then what about the TPP, the one we were just about to sign? The one that Trump threw out. He threw it out.
Yeah.
For the second day he was in office, pretty soon after that.
I haven't been following that, real closely here lately.
Yeah. Can I tell you something that's happened? I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So, the other countries that were in the TPP, they've all gotten together and they're doing the TPP without the United States. So they'll have an agreement, a broad multilateral agreement that lowers tariffs among themselves, but the U.S. won't be part of it. I think that's a good thing?
I guess I really don't have an opinion on that. What do you think?
I think we should be with the other countries, but we shouldn't be with them where it's going to hurt us. I mean, we have to look out for America first, I think.
So that sounds interesting, but when the rest of Asia
World.
has a trade agreement and we're not part of it, it doesn't sound good to me. I've read a little more about it.
So who threw it out?
Trump threw it out.
Trump threw it
About
out
a
right
month
at
or
the
two after he
beginning.
got in office. And he could throw out NAFTA. I mean, he's
Mhm.
threatened to throw out NAFTA.
Mhm.
How about Canada? I mean, boy, they import all that timber and stuff. It's, you know, it sounds like an unequal balance, and I believe that when he was up there, Trump visited, he complained about the lack of balance in the trade. Yeah, that's kind of sounds serious to me. I don't know, do you believe that we ought to look at trade that way? You know, whether we have, with a particular country, you know, whether it ought to be a balance or, you know, if we're positive, we're positive. If we're negative, there's something wrong with it. To me, that's not the way trade works, but, you know, you're going to have those imbalances. I mean, that's part of the multilateral system.
I guess what are you really asking?
You know, so as I do these interviews, one thing I find out is, you know, we go into issues in a little more depth, and I guess, you know, we come up with areas where more exploration is kind of important, you know, so that people get more knowledge about those areas. One of the experiments that they've done is when we talk about the national deficit, people have actually gone out and they do intensive weekend programs with people from the right and the left. And in order to have everybody better educated about the deficit, and we're going to go into the deficit in a little bit. And one of the outcomes of that is that everyone ends up a lot closer in terms of what they agree on in terms of what we need to do. So, you know, now people say, can't raise taxes, never raise taxes. And then they see the reality of how the deficit is and how big it is. And they come away realizing, you know, we're not going to solve it without raising some taxes a little bit. And they end up thinking, well, it's welfare that's the problem. Some people, you know, think welfare is the problem. And they find out at most welfare to non-paying people is maybe 6% of the budget, the federal budget. If you include Medicare, it's a little higher. But Medicare, as you may know, goes to long-term nursing, and, you know, for elderly people, it's not all poor people, and that's about 6% of the budget. So when you actually understand what it consists of, you end up realizing there's no easy answers. And
So where does most of our money go? I mean, so it's 6% here, 6% here, another 6%
Good
over here.
question.
But the bottom line is, this is how much money is costing.
Right.
And because people say, well, it's only a small percentage of the big picture,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, there's a lot of items that have been added up.
Oh, that's very true.
And here's the bottom line. I mean, sure, this is only a 0.5% of $1 billion. $1 billion is a lot of money. So 1% of $1 billion is still a lot of money to people like me.
That $1 billion is nothing. I'm very sorry, but in our budget, $1
But
billion
I'm just
is
using
nothing.
that as a reference,
Yes.
because now it's probably $1 trillion or however.
Okay. But if we're going to attack the problem seriously, we need to go after really the big categories. And yeah, sure, you
So what
take
are the
something
big-
out of the
what-
small stuff.
So what are the big categories?
Okay.
Where are we spending our money?
Let's come back to the deficit, and I'll tell you.
Okay.
I'll tell you the three. I won't hold you in suspense. I mean, the three categories are military. That's about 600 billion. That's about, I don't know the percentage. There's Medicare, Medicaid, and there's Social Security, and there's interest on the debt. You add those four things up, you've got 75% of your budget. That's 75% of our budget. There's only 25% more to play with. The rest goes to veterans benefits, transportation, science, and you can name, 6 or 7 major categories. I suppose you could take science away from the budget 100%. you could take education away from the budget 100%. Doesn't strike me as very smart, but so there aren't many categories you can actually deal with in terms of reducing the budget. Now, I will say, Democrats don't want to deal with the entitlement part of it, Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. By the way, I would think if most people knew that that's what we have to deal with, they don't want to deal with it either, because we all get it. It's broad-based.
But we paid into it too.
Oh,
But
I'm sure.
But
Doesn't make it any less.
But I'll probably receive more than what I've paid in. If I live long.
You may if you live long enough, but they've done the actuarial table. Social Security is actually easy to fix. Let's come back to the deficit and let's go back to trade.
Okay.
So I do want to say one last thing about the deficit. Did you support the tax reduction bill that just passed?
Yes.
How come?
It's more money in my pocket. And I
Good for
believe
the
that a
country?
lot, and I still believe that a lot of my tax money is wasted.
Okay, great. So when we talk about the deficit and we talk about waste, that isn't going to do it. That isn't going to reduce the deficit.
Well,
What?
probably not.
No, it
Probably
won't.
will not.
No, it won't. So, if we talk about entitlements, those are just what they are. They're payouts. They're not waste. Actually, Social Security.
So you
Medicare-
believe that Social Security is a entitlement?
No, that's what they're called. I'm not saying they're good or bad. They're called entitlements. That's just in the budget category they're in. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I want my Social Security. Believe me.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I paid into it. I paid the max for since I've been working. So I really would like to get some of it out, but we'll come back to Social Security. I'm only pointing out that the solutions that people talk about for the deficit involve some raising of taxes, whether you like it or not, and we've been undertaxed for a while, and I'll talk about those trends. And we're going to have to deal with entitlements, which I will tell you that's what Paul Ryan wants to deal with. But he's also said, when we do that, we can't touch the military. The military has been just fine. Well, we're going to have to deal with all of it, every last bit of it. It's all going to need to be on the table. And the country's going to need to make some hard choices. You're not going to hear about that very much. But that is what's going to need to happen. And by the way, the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, just looked at this latest tax bill reduction.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to add $1.5 trillion to the deficit over the next 10 years. It's not affordable. Why can we do it?
Who do we owe the money to?
Good question. So it used to be it was all domestic. Now it's 48% Chinese. So
the Chinese are buying up our debt.
treasuries. They're buying our they keep our treasury interest rates sustainable. If they dropped out of the market, it would all be internal, but rates would go up probably.
Mm-hmm.
But it also supports their trade. So another aspect of our economics is we're the reserve currency of the world. People don't talk about that very much. All goods across the world, almost all of it, not all of it. There are now other currencies that play a role, but most of it is dollar denominated. It means that when we print money, it can be absorbed by the rest of the world. Anyway, so that's a very important factor that allows us to spend more than there is a relationship between the government deficit and our exports and imports. So the fact that under Trump in the next year our deficit is going to go up to $1 trillion is what the CBO is projecting. That's unsustainable, by the way. And this latest bill has, increased. It's what is leading to some of that. Other trends over the years have, added to that deficit. But that bill that just passed is part of the problem. And do you know that?
So you don't think? So you're saying that we need to increase taxes on who? When they say that 40% of the people here in the United States don't pay taxes anyway.
You're
they
right.
get back more than they get. So why aren't we taxing those people?
So those people.
So, because they're
Yeah.
what? Because
So
they're
do you-
considered a lower income,
Mhm.
and so they get a bigger break than what somebody farther up the chain. And so I have to pay taxes,
Yeah,
and this person here doesn't.
right.
And
So,
and that is fair, and who's honest? Because 60% of the people here in the United States are paying their taxes, 40% are paying zero.
and I take it you think that's unfair?
It is unfair.
Okay. And is that a
It's
hot
totally
button?
unfair.
I think we're getting to a hot button.
Because if you make $1, you should have to pay taxes on it. I don't care who you are.
And
Our tax system is not, I don't think it's fair, because,
so, go ahead. No, keep going. Yeah. You were going to say it's not fair because.
well, it's not fair because those that have enough can invest and hide their money,
Mhm.
or invest or whatever they want to do, and so they pay very little taxes.
Mhm.
And yet the middleman, the middle America, all we can do is go to work.
Yeah. Right.
We can't make enough to invest and hide any of our money or have tax write-offs or anything else like that.
Or.
And so at the end of the year,
Mhm.
I get a W-2, oh,
Mhm.
you owe.
Mhm.
But if I don't make enough, you owe nothing.
So what do you think about the fact that the bill you just said you supported, there's a business part of it which lowered the business taxes.
Mhm.
There's a big part of it that lowered individual taxes. What do you think about the fact that the people at the very 1% get 42% of the benefits of those tax cuts?
Well, I didn't read the whole tax
Well,
bill
I'm just
because it's
telling
not
you.
available.
I'm just telling you. No, it's absolutely available.
Okay,
I mean,
1%, what was
but
that
The
now?
top 1%
Okay,
get 42% of the benefits of those tax cuts. And since the 1970s, that top one, mind you, I'm not a soak the rich, we'll get there, but I'm not a soak the rich guy, but I do believe they need to pay more. But this lowered the top rate from like 32% to 28%. That's enough for those people. Because they're making, at the bottom part of the 1%, they're making $400,000 or $500,000 a year. Then you go up from there, you know, and those people, so that's part of the bill you support. I'm sorry, but it is. And you still support it?
You know what?
Yeah.
If it puts money in my pocket, that's the way I look at things now. Because I'm not in that class of people.
Right.
And how they are taxed, how they pay their taxes, how they avoid their taxes, and everything else. I will never be there.
Right. Not, I won't either.
And so, because the 1% get 42% of the benefits, supposedly, what about the other 99%?
Okay, so.
40% don't pay,
Mhm.
so that leaves what, 39%? No.
Yeah, okay.
But I mean,
so there,
it's the middle income people that are paying the bulk of the taxes.
yeah, but
No matter how you
I
go
think
about
that the point that I'm making is we're kicking the can down the road. We just lowered taxes on the very richest people. And yes, you'll get depending on the estimates,
Well,
anywhere
I mean,
from
usually $5.
anywhere from, you know, your $1,000 to $2,000 to $3,000 a year. I'm sorry, but you know, that's what the middle class generally will get.
Mhm.
The people who are in the top 10% will get significantly a little more than that, but it depends where they live, because if you live in California, you're going to lose money from this whole thing, because they're a high income tax state and they're a high housing price state,
Mhm.
and they've just reduced the amount of mortgage interest you could take. But the people who are in the top 10% and then on to the 1% get the highest percentage reduction in their taxes, and they get the highest absolute reduction in their taxes. And when I talk to Frank Smallwood, the way he justifies this is, let the rich be rich because they will invest and make us, all the rest of us, richer. The only trouble with that is, since the 1970s, all of the benefits of economic growth have gone to the people in the top 1%. Your, meaning people in our middle class, and we are middle class, in our middle class brackets, have not seen the benefits of productivity growth at all. The average paycheck of the average middle class person has not gone up since the 1970s. Freakonomics might have that in there, I don't know if they do, but that's the fact. It's pretty well known, pretty widely dispersed. So, I take it you're Republican, am I fair about that?
Yes.
Pretty much a voter.
Mhm.
So this free trade thing with Trump, that's not a Republican mantra. That's not, I mean, free trade is Republican and he doesn't support free trade. How do you reconcile that with your former beliefs? Because you voted for many people who believed in free trade.
But I voted the last 2 elections, I have not voted for any incumbent. So I guess I'm not a true blue Republican.
So in 2012,
I vote for the person that I think will do the best job. That's where I'm at now. So
Yeah.
I guess I can claim I'm a Republican,
so let's
but I'm more or less probably more of a moderate but I'm starting to look at things a lot differently now.
in what way?
That instead of just voting straight ticket, this is the way it's going to be,
Mm-hmm.
now I'm looking at that person and saying, you know what, I think you've been there long enough.
Mm.
We need a change.
What if he's done a great job?
After so long, I think it's time for somebody else to get in.
So then we have all these politicians, and I would count Obama among them, and then we get Trump, who don't have enough experience, and they get in, they don't know how to work with Congress, they don't know how to unite the country, and we end up in a worse situation. I have to disagree with the idea that people with less experience somehow have more to offer. I don't buy that. If you go and you want to, hire an engineer, you want to hire a farmer, you want to hire a doctor, you go for someone who's got the experience. Now, if
Where do you get the experience at? So we have people there that are 85 years old.
Yeah. So which one?
And so that.
But there are many that are 85.
No, but if there comes a time when we need a change and get a different view on things. Instead of being told all the time that this is the way it is. This is the way it is all the time.
And you know what? I'm actually a conservative. I believe in the institutions that have led to prosperity since World War II. I'm more conservative than you. Well,
I think everybody meddles in everybody's business in some form or another. Whether it be Russia, the United States, China, Canada. I can't believe that they all don't meddle and try to influence other countries in some way, in some form or another.
I think there are some subtle ways that people influence, but it doesn't go to the extreme that the Russians did in our election. I also happen to differentiate between their influence and our influence.
And so,
I would rather have us
their
exert the
influence was
influence than
what?
them.
They convinced enough people to vote for Trump? Is that what people are saying? That's what I understand is that, and that's what everybody's concerned about, is that they meddled enough and brainwashed enough people to vote for Trump and not Hillary.
They did try to exert some influence, and they favored
And
Trump.
so instead of giving the American people the
Benefit of the doubt?
benefit of the doubt that they have their own brain and they can be influenced by whomever. And so that's how they voted. Because of the Russia influenced enough people, and that's why Trump is in office now.
I think, unfortunately, it is true that a lot of people are influenced by social media. I mean,
A lot of people are influenced by social media.
and, so I think, yes, there are groups of people who may be less influenced by it, but I think a lot of people are influenced by social media. And more, unfortunately, I think people believe in conspiracy theories and things that if you are sort of read a lot and are a little more grounded, you tend not to believe in as much of. So yeah, I do think that social media can be a negative influence. I actually hate Facebook personally. It drives me wild. I mean, I
Do you have a Facebook account?
I have a Facebook account, but I don't use it very much. I should. I need to learn how to use it. I don't use it very much. Yeah.
I have an account.
But by the way, as we talk, I'm just really interested in, in what you think and how you think about things, and it's why I'm doing this, because,
I'm doing all the talking, my wife hasn't really said anything.
yeah, you are doing most of the talking, and Kim is hiding behind you. Yes, every so often you say, Kim, what do you think? But yeah, no, I don't.
Do you think democracy works in our country?
There are many reasons why it's under threat right now. Not having to do with Trump.
Correct.
I think Trump
Correct.
exacerbates things because of the way he talks and the attitudes he has about institutions. But democracy has been disrupted ever since the 1960s. People trace it back. When the two-party system kind of broke up and the Democratic, the Deep South aligned with the Republican Party, and it's led to this schism between the parties and the increasing polarization that we see.
Mm-hmm.
And it all happened when the Democrats passed the civil rights bills. I mean, people trace this back. And the Republican, and then there are other social movements that have contributed to that. The evangelical movement and the tax movement, equating greater taxes with government waste, that's all it is. If you increase your taxes, it's all waste.
That bothers me.
Yeah. Oh, you think it is?
Oh, yeah, that bothers me a lot.
See,
Yes.
there we go. So, let's take Medicare and Medicaid. Do you think that's waste?
No, not all of it, no.
Okay, so that's a big piece of government spending.
It's a big piece of government spending. And no, I just think that our legislators, it's okay that it's something we have to do as the American people, but they don't have to. I mean, they don't have Obamacare. They should have Obamacare because they passed it. It should be something they want, and they should have to have it.
So that's unfair, but that's not government waste. I mean, it's a little bit.
Well, yeah, okay. But I guess that's the part I was thinking about, the democracy, that the people that are the head and that are making the laws don't really know how we are, and anything that we have to do, they don't want to do it, they vote themselves out. Nope. I mean, that bothers me.
They should have had to take Obamacare.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Well, yeah, because they're the one that passed it.
Absolutely. Totally agree. So, so do you think, so back to government waste. So do you think that Social Security is government waste?
Well, didn't they take part of it and use it for other things? Isn't that why it's having a hard time?
Okay, but that's not Social Security itself. But do you think, the Social Security payments are, so that's the problem with government accounting, and that creates deficits in the long run when you take stuff that was designed to go into the Social Security system into the pool,
It's used for something else.
and it's used for something else, and that's because the money isn't there. But the actual spending on Social Security, do you think it's a waste?
No,
Okay.
no.
So we've accounted for Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. We're going down the line and getting to the
Medicare,
bigger
Medicaid.
things.
Why does the government feel as though they have to provide insurance for everybody at a certain age?
Oh, okay. You don't think that Medicaid is a good thing or Medicare is a good thing?
Well, it's, everybody needs insurance, but why, okay, I'm gonna turn 65 here,
Mm-hmm.
well, this Friday. And I have to pay Medicare. It comes out of my Social Security check. Whether I need it or not, they will.
Well, if you're sick, you need it.
No, I mean, he already had
But-
insurance, we already had insurance,
But
but
we had insurance.
But they're
So
saying
why?
you can't use your
And
insurance.
if you don't do as the government tells you and join their programs, then you will be fined later.
Mm. So, but Medicare provides health insurance for an awful lot of people. And unless you get the whole pool, I mean, this is the nature of insurance.
Yeah.
Unless you make sure everyone's in the pool, you can't do the program.
Yeah.
So,
And so they do, because
allowing
at age
people-
65, everybody
allowing
has to
people to
get
get, to exclude themselves is essentially going to bankrupt the program.
Mhm.
So either we have it or we don't. So are you against it? We shouldn't have it? We can't exclude you from it.
Do our legislators take it?
I don't know what the rules are for our legislators,
See,
but
that's what I
but
wonder.
that's a different question. That's a question of fairness and the legislators. But should we abolish Medicare and Medicaid?
No,
Okay, well,
I don't.
I
Because
mean,
people,
you're going to need it
at
when
the
you're
age of
retired.
65,
You're gonna need it at some point.
you're gonna have to have it.
Right.
And so, I guess if it has to be, then yes, it's a good program,
Right.
so long as it isn't abused.
And people do abuse it. I mean, yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
And they ought to go after that.
Yeah.
For sure. And I know, I remember showing a house to somebody, a few years ago. And they were in their like 40s and they were going to try and get disability insurance. I think, you're not disabled. And by the way, they were white, they were young. No way.
Social
You should not
Security
have it.
disability.
Yeah, Social Security
Yeah.
disability. You should not have it. So that's waste. I'm not going to disagree with you there. That ought to be curtailed.
Yeah, they need to, the programs are designed to help people when they're older,
Mm-hmm.
which is good.
Mm-hmm.
They just need to curtail the waste that goes on. They need to investigate who is actually receiving Social Security disability benefits.
Yeah. So I'm
I
not.
mean, you go down to the Social Security office,
Mm-hmm.
and you would think that most of the people in there would be older people, wouldn't you?
You would.
But they're not.
No, and I'm not going to disagree with you that because the older people don't
And there's
have to
nothing
go
wrong
into
with
the office. I mean, they basically get your Social
Yeah.
Security. But again, that might be some small percent. Maybe it's 20% of the program, which is not nothing. But that is not going to solve our deficit problem. Yeah, you need to go after it. You need to stop it.
But we have to start someplace.
No, I'm not disagreeing with you. We can start there.
Yeah.
But the tough choices still need to be made. You aren't going to reduce the deficit significantly unless you make those tough choices. That includes the military. You think there's a lot of waste in the military?
Oh, yeah.
So, Paul Ryan isn't. He said, no, military budget's all fine. But probably more needed to be in the military budget because I've been reading, the maintenance of suffering, et cetera, so you need a little more there. But you need to put the whole thing on the table. You want to deal with this problem, you put it all, including taxes.
Now, do you think that the Veterans Administration the hospitals,
Mhm.
would it be better to have it privatized rather than have the government try to run something like that?
So, I really don't know. And one thing, I don't think that privatizing is necessarily the solution or the panacea that it's going to be automatically more efficient.
No,
I don't necessarily believe that.
yeah.
So,
I'm just asking, do you think?
I don't know enough about
Yeah,
the Veterans Administration, but I have read that the outcomes actually are every bit as good as in other hospitals overall.
Yeah.
You hear the horror stories,
Oh.
but overall, it's not bad care. So, I don't know. I've also heard that there are some very expensive veterans programs where you only pay $400 worth, for your premium every year,
Mhm.
and you get the entire package. That has to stop. I mean, that is too much of a burden for the country. We can't afford it.
Yeah.
So, and whenever congressmen object to that, they're told they're unpatriotic because you're denying the veterans something. So that's the kind of thing, yeah, everyone's gonna need to, there needs to be some pain.
People have to start making up the hard decisions.
They do, they have to make the hard decisions.
If you can show me that by raising my taxes
Mm-hmm.
will improve the attitude of this country,
Right.
I will pay more taxes.
And I think if there were a bipartisan effort where everything were put on the table, and there were an honest discussion without labels,
Yeah.
I think people would respond positively to that. But in our current political climate, for a lot of reasons, we're a lot more polarized than we were.
We are a lot.
I mean, it used to be that the two parties were like this, and there were actually more, in the 60s, more liberal Republicans in the early 60s
Hmm?
than there were liberal Democrats, because a lot of those Democrats were Southerners who were very conservative. They also exercised fiscal conservatism. Those Southern Democrats, they prevented Johnson until he was able to from increasing budgets. The way they explode, and then Reagan exploded the budget deficit by reducing taxes prematurely without reducing spending. So you go back through the history, see some of that. So anyway, I've really enjoyed talking to you an awful lot. I know we had a lot of back and forth. There was, some of it was, like a little, maybe some of it was slightly sharp, a little bit, but unless you're going to have those conversations, you're not going to get at what people are really thinking or feeling and why. And I feel like I learned an awful lot, in terms of what you're thinking and feeling. Hopefully you learned a little bit from me, and
We learned a lot from you.
and then that's the way these discussions need to
And
occur.
I think it's good. I
Yeah.
think it made
Thank you.
me really think about things a little differently, I think.
No, good,
Mhm.
yeah, good. You'll think the same way forever.
Maybe,
So-
maybe not.
No.
I try to keep an open mind.
Yeah. No, and everyone I've talked to, says we want to keep an open mind. I just don't think these discussions go on enough.
I agree.
And if they went on constantly, I think you'd start seeing people shift towards what I think is the true center, which is fiscal conservatism. You're not interventionist, but you want to protect our own interests. You believe in democratic institutions. You support international institutions. And we have some common areas where we need to invest in our country and infrastructure and education, et cetera. I don't know. So
Are you pretty scared the way things are?
I think the trends, I would say the one problem that's, two things that scare me the most is this isolationism that we seem to be going into, where I think it threatens our standing in the world. And in fact, it's, we call it America first, but it's going to weaken us because we'll be isolated and the rules will break down, and that will not be good for us in the long run when our leverage decreases anyway because of changing economic forces and Asia becoming so much more important economically. That will not help us to be isolated. Secondly, So I'm worried about international trends. And some areas of the world are just a mess, like the Middle East is a mess. But secondly, in terms of our own government, the deficit worries me, but also this polarization. We are so polarized, we can't make common policy. That worries me. And I think that's another thing I think that is very negative about Trump. He is so divisive. By choice. He doesn't have to be this divisive. When he isn't this divisive, like right after the State of the Union message, people liked it a little better. I thought, there are things I didn't like about it, but I thought it was a better speech than he normally gives. You read from the teleprompter. When he does that, he's so much better off. But this stuff about fake news, and I know you believe in fake news, but this stuff about fake news, it's just destructive. All the Mexicans who come over are rapists. It's just destructive. You can reduce immigration and not say those things. You can say we ought to have a skills-based, immigration policy.
Yeah.
Why not? Why not let in the people? I work with a ton of Indians in IT.
Mm-hmm.
India from India.
Mm-hmm.
Half of the IT department is India.
Mm-hmm.
And that's true in every big company I've been in.
Right.
They're great. They're great people too. They're really nice people. And they speak English, and they're very smart technology-wise. We get the best people.
So why
India.
can't we find those people here in America? Where are those people at?
We don't turn them out. We don't turn out enough of them.
Why don't we?
I don't know. Good question. Why don't we? Well, we don't. So you got to get them from somewhere.
Well, I understand it, but I just don't understand why we can't produce our own intellectual people here in this
I
country.
totally agree with you. We need to increase our emphasis on science and learning science and math, and you got to get.
Is it the fact that college and higher education is getting to a point that people can't afford to go there?
I think
Only
now you're
only
sounding
the
like
upper-
now you're sounding like Bernie Sanders. Come on, man.
But you know what I mean?
Yes, I do. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you.
That was
for
a
that.
great discussion. I really enjoyed it. Got to know you a little better, and I know it's tough to talk about these things, but
I think
we
this
have
is
to
good.
do it. We
I
have
think
to
this
do
is
it.
real good.
Thank you.
It made me really think.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks, Dave.
I talk 99% of the time.
Yeah, well, it's good. It's good. All right. Thank you so
All right.
much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Have a good one.
We'll see